The mechanism I'm just describing for you today could function and is feasible from a technical point of view, and it certainly is, according to our tests on the expertise level. To the second point, I would just say that my imagination is not that you build up a huge trustee fund, but that you have the mechanism ready for interventions, and that you have a preparation which is well done and which is fixed so that everybody knows it. This will in itself have cure effects on the market speculations. I'm not going into further details, but of course you can easily understand that the intervention mechanism on when are we going to intervene, at what time, how big should the spreads be between prices on a member state's bonds and prices on the average, right? We're not going to respond to that directly, because that could in itself give rise for speculation again. We don't want to do that. That is why we describe the mechanism in the way I just did here. The second point is, of course, also to say to you that any threshold of splits or maximum of spreads is not good either for a market which first and foremost need a robust collective response based on the principles I've just mentioned to you. You can, and you will make some choices on the technical content of it. Should you go the insurance way, or should you go the guarantee way in mutual guarantee system? I'm not going into that now, but just to tell you that inside the box there are several solutions, but all of them, what we are proposing here would have no effects on transformation of money from one member state to another one. That is the fundamental idea.
Excuse me, can you just give your name and organization? Yeah, Jim Neuter from Bloomberg. Two questions about the fund and then one about the politics surrounding it. About the fund, you said you don't envision a huge amount, so how big would this fund be, and can you walk us through exactly how the money would be raised? I understood that presumably member states would pay in, and then this would serve as effectively collateral for the EIB to borrow. Then on the politics of it, what are the chances of this actually being accepted? You've pointed out in your press release that there's a fair amount of resistance to it at member states level.
Yes, two sets of responses. The one is that there's nothing specific in this construction here. In a sense, you can say that in the history, and also actually the EIB have raised several tranches of loans on the market without any troubles, and which have been guaranteed on exactly the same premises as you have known up till now. And what we're saying here is that this solidarity of mutual assurance as a basis for making EIB loans is exactly the same model we want to extend also to this type of trustee fund. You can do it, as I told your colleague just before, in a technical slightly other way, but that's not what I'm going into today. And I don't think it will be difficult for the EIB, when it is the EIB taking the loans, to obtain the loans under fair conditions due to the mutual insurance I just described to you. How huge, how many, I would say, how big would the fund be at a time? I would say sufficient, I would say. I have no intention in going into, you could say, speculative sizes, because it will totally depend upon the concrete situation you are in. The mere fact that such a mechanism is a reality corresponding to Article 122 in the treaty, the mere fact of that will have calming effects on the market.
Do you think you have to change? Christoph Wocher, do you think you have to change the mandate for the EIB to do this? Is it covered under the actual mandate, or do you have to change it?
I think it's yes.
And the second question is, who actually is then saying what the fair price is for, let's say, Greece, if Greece would get money out of this fund? Is it ECOFIN? Is it the Eurozone? Is it the Commission? I mean, who's setting the fair price?
I would say that Greece, as Stavros Lambrinidis described today, is in a specific situation, and Greece will not be covered by this mechanism in the short lane, because it will take time to establish this one. And this one is thought of being a permanent part of the Eurozone in the future. The price, therefore, will be first and foremost settled in practice by the pricing the EIB bank will obtain when it's having its trustee fund to make loans on the market. So here, everything confirms that having a mutual mechanism covering all the Eurozone member states will, all other things equal, give us a fairer price than a single member states under attack from hedge funds or investment bankers. Now, to the political possibilities, as you and your colleague asked about, I think I see indications, and I hope I'm right, that the Commission understands now the red signals and is ready to propose something of this kind. That's my strong appeal to them. I've also noticed that the daily leader, political leader of the Eurozone, have expressed his criticism to hedge fund speculation against credit default swaps, and that we need to do something. So there seems to be moves now, after all. I think that Mr. Barroso has been sleeping for too long time, and I think it's a mess that the Commission have just left it to the ECB to manage or try to manage. This is a Commission responsibility to come up with a concrete proposal, and we are sending this proposal to them. I don't think the EIB need an extra mandate in our construction in the way that it's constructed as a trustee fund, and I don't see any formal problems in this construction here. But of course, we'll have to look into the formalities at the top of that. Yes.
From Reuters. Aren't you afraid that this fund will just be a recipe to avoid tough measures? After all, if there is no sort of markets over countries, then politicians often backtrack on their austerity promises. What concrete measures to enforce cuts would be involved in this rescue mechanism?
Stavros, I think you could express your attitude. What a choice. Should we let the market decide, or should we let politicians decide?
The proposal is very concrete. What exists today would exist in the future. In other words, if you're a member of the Eurozone, you cannot violate the rules of the Eurozone. And if you do, you get through a process of having to adjust. And that process, as exists today, would be overseen by the Commission and approved and determined by ECOFIN and the Council. That wouldn't change. What would change would be the ability, as a country is making a tough set of changes, to be able to do so while borrowing, I emphasize, not receiving handouts. Our proposal is about having a fund that lends to people, doesn't give them gifts, while borrowing at rates that are equivalent to the rates of other member states. If you don't have that, you can see immediately the possibility of a collapse of even the process of stability in the European Union. And what do I mean by this? Assume that you attempt to reduce your deficit through tough fiscal consolidation measures. Assume at the same time that you are subject to speculation in the markets to make an easy profit, and that therefore you can only borrow as you're applying these measures at very, very high rates. If that is the case, in the end of the day, your debt will not go down. Because what you cut in all the austerity measures that you apply, you lose by increasing the high rates and the debt you have to pay in the future. It is self-defeating for the EU to allow that kind of speculation to continue. Self-defeating not only for its all-important growth aspect, which, as Paul has mentioned, is ignored today, but self-defeating even for the existing common stability aspect. So the question is, does one utilize this opportunity of Greece's problems and other countries potentially down the line in order to think in a visionary way to safeguard the euro and the stability of Europe in the long term? Or does one simply